we don't have audio for you.
That was on my side. Sorry about that.
Well, you're the first one. You're on mute, Keira. You're on mute, so you're the first. Thank you.
All good. Thanks. So, hi, I'm Keira. I'm a web developer and I work in tiny teams, and so I am also security. I'm one of the many hordes of people who accidentally have this responsibility. And I want to say a couple of things before I get into the satire of my talk. So first thing is, this is satire. I don't want anyone to think for a second that I or the organisers of ComfyCon want to prevent women from joining cybersecurity. This talk is my way to have a laugh while engaging with some deeper material and hopefully leave you with some ideas about how not to be part of the problem. So a general content warning for sexism, tiny bit of homophobia and transphobia, it is in the satire. Second, where examples are given, much like the previous talk from Jess, these are my personal experiences. They're the experiences of my friends and other people I trust. They all really happened. They all really happened within the last 8 years or so. This is not ancient history. Not all women will have the same experiences or concerns, and it won't necessarily reflect the whole sum of experience for non-binary people, Black and Indigenous people, disabled people. You can definitely assume these are not the worst things that anyone has experienced, but the things I'll mention are known to generally make women uncomfortable or unwelcome. And the last is, I know this isn't a problem caused by all men or even caused exclusively by men. So if the shoe fits, or if the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. And with that done, we'll start the satire. So here we are in 2022, women have been joining cyber at an alarming rate. In the US, women's participation rose from 11 to 24% in just a few years, and it's hovering around 16% in Australia. I don't have the numbers for non-binary people, but I can assure you they're probably very concerning. Gone are the days where we could assume that women would be weeded out of maths and science in high school or get pregnant early and often enough that they didn't have their own time to pursue careers. And the law's not even on our side anymore. But thanks to some lingering structural inequalities, a slow-changing media culture, and the realities of child-rearing under capitalism, we've got a fighting chance. Some of us in the industry have been working hard to keep women from settling in. And of course, not all men. And I ask you, why not? There are plenty of things we could all be doing to contribute to the discomfort and exclusion of women and non-binary people, whether you're a colleague, a manager, conference organiser, founder, tutor, or just colourful community identity. Education and training. So obviously, the best bet is to stop people from getting in the door in the first place. So what can we do to keep our learning places just for the boys? So first, you could ask women or anyone who doesn't look like they're wearing the right kind of hoodie if they're lost. Make sure that teachers say things like, "You don't look like you're a nerd," or "I'm surprised you wanted to hang out with all the geeks," when girls show any interest in STEM subjects. If mature women join a course, make sure they know that they're really out of place. Don't ask pronouns, never give your own. Make sure the toilet situation is binary, causing discomfort and risk for many non-binary or trans people, and only ever have 2 gender fields on any given form. Make sure group discussions are combative. Make people compete and belittle anyone who doesn't know the right answer. This is likely to keep out all sorts of undesirables, not just women. If a woman gets the wrong answer, assume it's because she's a woman, not an individual. And in formal settings, you can mark people down for a lack of public contribution. Just ignore the reasons why minorities who are aware that they're judged differently might not speak up. And ignore harassment. She needs to know what it's going to be like when she enters the industry. But what if they get through the training? What if they come to the recruitment stage? How can you keep people out at that point? So the first thing is to recruit primarily at meetups or via introductions from your guys. This keeps outsiders out, and it holds mothers back in particular, as many of them can't regularly attend weeknight events. If you're recruiting at DEF CON or the like, have your company's recruitment party at a strip club. Lots of people won't come if you do that. Never have any part-time jobs or job share jobs. And if you do have them, make sure you don't list them and don't tag them so they don't come up in a search. If you feel like you have to have part-time options, make sure they're tokenistic, like a 9-day fortnight. This makes it clear that they're meant to be for the benefit of men with hobbies and not for people with significant caring responsibilities. Insist the role requires extensive travel, weekend hours, and unplanned overtime, whether or not it does. And never hire enough people to comfortably fit your service window. Just insist your staff sacrifice their home lives instead. These ones have the added bonus of preventing any men who are sympathetic to women's equality from taking on an equal share at home. It means that it makes life difficult for their partners, and it sets a poor example for their children, starting the whole process again. You're just propping up patriarchy on all fronts. Good job. Use phrases in your ads that convey domination, individualism, and exceptionalism. Think of things like rock star, hero, 10x, alpha. List every criteria you can imagine, not just your must-haves. In the interview, ask women if they are comfortable working in an all-male team. Make sure they know they might need to toughen up and have a thick skin, and say this like you're helping. Never train your recruitment staff in unconscious bias. Never take any steps to remove this sort of bias from your hiring decisions. And whatever your company approach to neurodiversity, make sure you don't consider how that might show up differently for people of other genders. Expect women staff and non-binary staff to meet aesthetic, deportment, and interaction standards that you would never require of your male staff. Never advertise the pay. Ask interviewees what they'd expect to be paid. If a woman's answer seems low to you, just take it as a win. Just ignore the literal centuries of history that affect how men and women judge their value differently and assume that that's all she's worth. For bonus points, you can tell her that she's not allowed to discuss her pay with colleagues either, and if she tries to get more pay, you could fire her for values misalignment. Ask women if they have children, if they plan to, and if they plan to have more. 80% of women will have children and 20% won't, so make sure you judge them regardless of what their answer is. Never ask men the same thing. And hire mostly on culture fit, where by culture fit you mean same gender, same colour, same vibe, and willing to work really long hours. Never hire anyone who has had dramas at their previous workplace, even if those dramas was them being the victim of harassment, bullying, or abuse. But look, some of them are already there. Some of us are already here. So it's not good enough to just talk about the pipeline. 38% of women are reportedly already planning to leave tech within the next 2 years, and that's a great start. But what can we do to speed up the exodus? There's plenty of things you can do. Only put one woman in each team max. Do not hire two at once, and never let them work together or support each other or create any sort of solidarity. If you give a woman a challenging project, make sure it's under-resourced and likely to fail. The rest of the time, give her boring work below her capacity that nobody else really wants to do. Don't let her attend client meetings or present her own work, and where possible, take credit for her work and ideas. Anyone can do that, not just the boss. If you do need to find someone and you only know the role, be dubious or surprised or outright disbelieving if a woman is the person in the role. Ask to speak to the men. Don't provide sanitary bins in all of your toilets. This is an issue for anyone with a shedding uterus or bladder problems, so you can cause problems for women, men, non-binary people, trans men, and disabled people with just one thoughtless gesture. You can make mothers and non-binary parents unwelcome by making leave difficult to access, making sure there are no private spaces to pump, and talking about the importance of doing industry activities or training in their spare time. Suggest that it's a career-limiting move to have children, but only mention this to the women. Don't worry about the men. And while we're talking about icky body things, it's a good idea to make sure your managers don't know anything about and are unsafe to talk about fertility treatments, pregnancy, menstruation, menopause, or transition. All of these things can require leave or adjustment at work, and you can make people's work lives extremely uncomfortable if you just refuse to acknowledge it. Champion facts over feelings. Do not consider that women are not usually in quantitative studies, and transgender and non-binary people are absolutely not in quantitative studies, and therefore there are no objective facts to back up what they're experiencing. Tell them their concerns aren't relevant to normal or most people. Talk about emotions versus rationality, but be really careful to only consider crying or women's reactions emotional. Men's rage, frustration, or anger are exempt because they only express such feelings over serious, rational issues, like who should be allowed to play the character of Doctor Who. Men famously have neither bodies nor emotions, so they're much better workers. Give women feedback that they are too aggressive or too lacking in confidence, but allow no middle ground. Don't have an onboarding process for new team members. Sink or swim here, bro. That's how the big boys roll. As a colleague, you can make sure women know where they stand by using feminine terms to describe things and people that you don't like. Pussy, princess, little girl, and bitch are all a really good start. This tip will probably also work for ensuring that gay men and others feel unwelcome in your team. Extra points if you use rape as an analogy for workplace successes or failures. Avoid having difficult conversations with your staff or your colleagues about bullying or harassment. If you want to resolve a bullying complaint, make the person who's been bullied just avoid the person who's causing the problem. Celebrate difficult geniuses who excel at highly technical work but don't treat anyone very well. Never talk to them about improving that skill. Get women team members to take minutes, get coffee, or bring snacks. They're great at that. And make no one responsible for the dishes or workplace cleanliness. Sooner or later, chances are a woman will choose to clean up after everybody, and her resentment will grow, and she might join the 38% thinking of leaving. But what if you're not the boss? What if you have no structural power of any kind? Well, maybe you could be a community organizer or conference manager. In that case, there's plenty more things you can do. So make sure there are very few speakers who aren't men in your lineup, or go for gold and try to have no women speakers at all. Make sure that any women or non-binary speakers you do have are rostered on at the same time as the keynote, in the smallest room, or early in the morning the day after the party. Have booth babes. Never offer childcare. Don't stream or record your talks. Keep the focus on women at cyber events about fixing women so that they're more like the men. Never hold talks about bias at mainstream events attended by men where someone might be able to change something. Keep inviting and accepting speakers who are known to have harassed, assaulted, or stalked people, or who express views about women's general inferiority, and celebrate them. If you do have an in-person event and you've got a security or a safety team made of volunteers, fill it with dudes who want to cosplay at being cops. Don't give them any training about how to handle things like assault. Never do nameless reviews of talk proposals, sometimes called blind reviews. You might find that you accidentally pick more people who aren't men. And never have a code of conduct. If you have to have one, don't enforce it, especially not in any online conversation spaces. And if you're in none of those roles, you're just a person in the industry, what can you do? Well, there's something for everyone. Assume any woman at a conference is looking to date, interested in dating you, and would be pleased if you hit on her. Have you considered just groping women at networking events? It's very effective. Assume general incompetence in women. Assume a woman who's attended one of these events has attended with a male partner. If they say they work in cyber, assume they mean marketing or design. You could also laugh at them when they tell you they're technical. Post online about this general assumed incompetence. Make sure you use hashtags so that new women and students will find it and know what the industry is going to be like. If a woman has been groped or assaulted at a conference, blame her or tell her she's lying. Ask women at the conference if they will give you an invitation to the secret women's only party. Try to lie your way into the not actually secret, not actually women's only party for the Women in Tech event that you weren't invited to. Never attend talks by or about women, and never read anything about gender, culture, or race from a writer who has lived experience of these things that's different to yours. Assume that men who are talking about these issues and who are smart at other things must also be good at talking about this issue too. Assume that because you are smart at other things, your opinions on things like gender equality, affirmative action, and merit are also well-informed and sensible. Refer to hypothetical senior professionals as greybeards. Refer to hypothetical incompetent people as mothers or grandmothers. Don't follow any women or non-binary people on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Mastodon. You might learn something. Constantly remind women that they are out of place, whether you're trying to help or not. You could also try using the language of protest and liberation movements to explain your own lack of desire to change. Pretend bringing your whole self to work means never having to keep a rape joke or a racist comment to yourself. Use the term technical as though it means intelligent. Make it really clear that non-technical roles are less than. Talk about the pipeline problem and teaching girls to code, but don't step up for your women colleagues. Little girls are a lot more palatable than women after all because they're not angry yet. And make endless excuses for the men who do or say sexist things. He didn't mean it. He's just socially awkward. Never make the same excuses for women, especially trans women, if they are forceful or prickly in their own defense. I mean, that's a lot, but what if you're a woman? You can contribute in most of the ways I've already mentioned, but there's a couple of extra things we can do to really pull that ladder up behind us. If you haven't personally encountered anything that you recognise as sexism in the workplace, assume that other women are making it up, or complaining, or not tough enough, or just need to be a little bit more like you. Never consider how your experience might have been different if you were a parent, came in from a different pathway, were a little younger, a little older, or had looked different. If possible, proclaim publicly that you would be embarrassed to receive any benefit as a result of any kind of affirmative action measure. And say things like, if I had to do it, you can too. Never, ever look up anything about survivorship bias. So that is a long, but not exhaustive, list of ways we can keep women out of cyber and make it an unwelcoming place for other people too. And it's the end of the satire. So I do have a list of resources up. So I've got on my GitHub, you'll find there's a list of how to make things actually better and also just explorations of the problem. If you don't believe me or you want to look up some examples, they are there. And you can feel free to.
So there's been some comments around that this is basically a checklist of a lot of Australian organisations.
It really